I keep trying to explain to people that there's a tangible connection between being able to build things with your hands and sort of design things with your mind, and it's problem solving. It's a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing to rob. I mean, we all understand this. Whenever there's the apocalyptic looks into the future where everyone's sitting around fat with a feeding tube in them and they're fucking their avatar in some 3D environment, but they're not really doing it, you go, oh, that's sad. Well, in a weird way, having a job where you never really get to touch anything or build anything or create anything is its own form of that kind of sadness. It's satisfying to build something.
It's satisfying to finish is what it is.
Right.
Right? Look, you built your studio.
Yes.
And I know, look, I can't do what you do, but I know how it feels to finish a thing. And we did 300 dirty jobs. We shot in all 50
Bottle of
states.
rye in one night.
Half a bottle. We're
Half
not
a
animals.
bottle.
We're not animals. But really, it's the notion.
It feels good.
I don't care if you're digging ditches or building a bridge. You know, when you started, there was no ditch there. There was no bridge.
Right.
And now there is one. And it's a, you know, you can talk to some very successful actuarial accountants or financial people today. And I've done this. I've said, look, what's your desk look like at 6 in the evening versus 6 in the morning? And the answer, of course, is it's freaking identical. It doesn't change. You're not surrounded. Most people today are not surrounded by visual cues to let them know when they're done. You never know when you're finished. You know, you guys have a producer who might just flip the switch and you're over. But most people visually don't get that. Dirty jobbers, skilled trades, they know.
Right.
And the balance that comes from that is a kind of sanity that the average bear no longer possesses.
You're right, because the rest of us, you put so much stock in things that are completely ephemeral and outside of yourself to feel like you've accomplished anything.
Sure, or you look for somebody else to let you know how you did, when you did it, whether or not you'll be allowed to do it again, et cetera, et cetera.
There's a thing that takes place when you're building something that it's not really spoken out loud, although sometimes it is by the foreman. But when I used to build for a living, every day you showed up and there was we are going to get the garage framed out by the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to have the drywall up and we're not going to have the insulation in and maybe the electrical and plumbing won't be roughed in. But I think if we hustle, we can frame this thing out.
Small bites.
By the end of the day. And then when you did accomplish that, or sometimes you'd even just turn it into a game where you go, well, we're punching out in 40 minutes and we have 3 more of those ceiling joists to put up, so let's get cracking. It felt good. Like, time went by very quickly. It didn't have that feeling of putting the head on the Barbie that was coming down the never-ending conveyor belt. It had okay. And then when you showed up to the job the next day, either out loud or in your head, it would just be, we're going to get all this drywall hung today, and we're going to get the electrical roughed in. That's what we're going to do.
9 out of 10 people have jobs that, in terms of feedback, the only way you get it is from somebody else. You know, the only way you know how you're doing is when somebody tells you how you're doing. Not when you're putting up drywall, not when you're roughing out a foundation or framing a house. You know how you're doing every minute of every day. The feedback is not only constant, it's self-evident.
I've said it many times, too, and I don't know if these guys are just stoic, but I always have a smallish group of dudes working on something at all times. And it's never, ever since I got in the position where I could underwrite it, there's always been my house, we're building a studio, we're doing something at almost all times. Nobody's ever, it's not like I've ever walked in and somebody, and I went, hey, there's Gary and there's Jose, and no one ever pulled me and went, watch it, Jose's in a bad mood today. He's kind of moody.
Right.
Pretty bummed out about a team loss, or he got into it. It was always like, everyone was just, hey, Hefe! And it was like, how's everyone doing? Great! And it's off to work. And lunch was always, I'm going on a lunch run. You guys, I'll get whatever I decide to get. No one had any, oh, we ate burgers yesterday, or I'm lactose intolerant, or I got a whatever corn allergy. It was always happy to have whatever. But the mood was always a good mood. It was never a, and I'm not saying to go through life happy. I'm saying there's something about moving, being on your feet, physically doing something.
Kinetic energy, man.
Just kinetic energy where it wasn't like, another day, another dollar, pretty bummed out about this, or like the thing you get when you're locked in a cubicle and start turning on yourself.
You had it right 90 seconds ago with the word stoic. You know, I mean, it's not stoic in the sense that, you know, they're uncommunicative. And I'm talking by and large about the people I met on Dirty Jobs. I'm just thinking of a guy, I met him once. We were doing a basic rehab on a boat, an old yacht that had been pulled out and was, you know, up on a lift of sorts.
Right.
And this guy cracked his head. He was a bald guy, and he stood up too fast, and cameras around. He was a little out of his normal element. Anyway, he smacked himself in the head, and I saw him do it, and I looked at him. I said, "Dude, that really rang your bell." He said, "It's nothing," but he pulled out his baseball cap and he put it on. And about a minute later, we're talking and working, and two thick streams of blood. One comes down the right side of his face, and one comes right down his forehead, down his nose. And he's just talking to me, and he's like, "Oh," and he kind of wipes it away.